guys have like standing desks?
You guys probably do. We have barely enough desktop computers and like janky laptops just to get our documentation done. And everything's like dusty and crusty.
I mean, it's really hard for us too. Like, we don't have our own offices. Most of us just have a cubicle. I mean, they're large cubicles. There's like couches in them, but it's really, really hard sometimes.
Yeah, we just fight over desktop computers. It's first come, first serve. And then if you don't get there in time, then
I mean, us too. We don't get brand new Macs or anything. We just have to use recycled ones, like peasants.
Yeah. What do we even have? I think we have Chromebooks.
Chromebooks?
I know.
Wow. Not even MacBooks or anything?
No, but actually my boss did give me an iPad to use, but I keep forgetting to use it.
Is it like your own? Or
No.
Is it shared?
It just has like a bunch of apps that you can use for therapy, and it's pretty convenient in case like you're having a brain fart and you're just like, look at this screen. Press the picture that is the ball.
Maybe you should like install Crunchyroll on it so the patients could watch anime like Iser does with his iPad.
No. Also, they only care about watching a 24-hour news cycle, and they wonder why they're super depressed.
You should not mess with them, but you guys should put on pre-recorded news from like 2013 and tell them that it's all modern and just see if their brain picks up that it's old.
Some people would, but the people that are like long-term people there, they would not. They don't even know what year it is. They probably think it's 1947.
You know, we're talking, but I still do not feel warmed up at all. This is still terrifying.
Okay.
We're going to get into the mode because we're starting.
Hey listeners, I'm your host Autumn, and welcome to the For You podcast, a podcast built specially for you, youth and young people, by you. If you're a returning listener from last month, we're glad to have you back, and if you're new here, welcome. So just a quick recap. For You is a continuation of TFC's youth podcast, The Think Tank, but this twist focuses on a new topic each month and a guest to simply discuss God. We hope our conversation can resonate and encourage you to grow in your relationship with Him.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the For You podcast. This month we'll be discussing the nitty-gritty topic of church hurt, something that isn't usually discussed a lot and sometimes shied away from. Today we have two guests, Amanda and Angel. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves really quick before we dive in. So let's start with Amanda.
Hi, my name is Amanda Quintana. Do you want to know like something about me?
I want to know it all.
Okay, well, I am not a youth, but I am kind of young. I'm 30 years old. My profession is a speech language pathologist, and I have been in church for as long as I can really remember.
Awesome. Angel?
Hi, everybody. I'm Angel. I'm also almost 30, but still a youth, unfortunately. I am a program manager by trade at work. I work with the children's department, production, and church administration here at the Family Church. And I have been in church consistently since I was about 14. My family came to the Lord probably when I was about 5 or 6, and then we disappeared for a minute and came back when I was a teenager. But I've been here ever since. So super excited to be here today.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you guys are here. All children at heart. I like it. All right. So I know it's a tough topic. It's something that is kind of like, why are we talking about this? Why are we addressing it? But I really want to get to know your guys' stories, your guys' experiences. And so this can go to either of you, but if you guys want to describe what church hurt is, and I know it comes in like a multiple different ways. So, whoever wants to start.
Amanda pointed to me, so I guess I have to start. Okay. For me, church hurt is any type of physical, mental, or emotional hurt that comes specifically from a religious institution, a church, a small group, maybe a youth group. I think it can range from a multitude of things: low level scandals, leaders, or even non leaders failing to live up to expectations, or again, it's a touchy subject, but even more extreme cases like physical abuse or somebody stealing or embezzling money. It's really anything that could be found within the church that causes people to feel hurt or could impact somebody's outlook on faith, the church, or even God in a negative way.
I like what you said, and I think that brings up like the topic of like what we're saying, church hurt, right? We all call it church hurt. That's kind of like the word that we use to describe it. And you said like it's under the umbrella of the church, but I think what's important to touch on maybe early on in this podcast is that yes, it's called church hurt, but like what it boils down to is like the church isn't really hurting you, it's really the people. Like the humans involved in church are the ones that have hurt you, but it's not necessarily like the church, like what God created for us to be.
Yeah, I think church hurt, like it gives like a stereotypical like idea of what church is and what God is, but it's like you said, it's like the people that are in the building that are doing the actual hurting. But yeah,
exactly. And then we put this name on it, and then I think this is probably what we're going to talk about later, but you know, I think people use that like, oh, I got hurt at church, so like let's blame the church,
yeah,
or let's blame God, but not really blaming the actual people, or like dealing with the root of it, which is like that person.
Gotcha. And so how prevalent do you guys think it is in the church?
I think it happens every day, every minute, everywhere. There's not one church or one believer who can say, I've never been church hurt.
I would have to agree with that sentiment. I think acknowledging it is the first step to improving it, regardless of whatever church or institution you're a part of. The fact of the matter is it happens. People are not perfect, and when you're in a people business like a church, there's no predicting human behavior, and it's going to happen whether it's intentional or unintentional. It's just the fact of the matter. When you invest your life, your time, your resources, your maybe even your finances, as deeply as most people do with their church, you're going to have some amount of emotional attachment to that organization and to that mission. So if somebody does something that you don't agree with or even harms you or your loved ones, you're definitely going to feel some type of hurt over that.
Yeah. And so I know you mentioned attachment, and I think that's a key word there. And so was there, in your guys' experiences, you can go back and forth with this, you don't have to like, I'm not going to focus on one of you guys, but like, was there an attachment with your church, and like, you know, how did that change over time? What happened?
I think, I want to clarify like what you mean by attachment. Like the church that we grew up in, or like why we came to God, and then like what happened, or
I'd say, well, let's start with the first one. So that was the church, right? Okay. And so was there an attachment with your church and the people that were in it?
Yeah, for sure. For me, I know like many of I guess I wasn't born in church, but my parents came to church when I was really young. And so when you're really young, I feel like I don't really remember life without church, even though at the beginning of our time in church, I wouldn't say that we were like always there or always consistent. But I do know that when you're in something for a long time, or when you grow up in it, like obviously that's all you know, or that's all you, that's your whole world, that's your whole environment. So I guess, yeah, of course there's an attachment to it. And especially in the case of me, because I grew up in a church where every single person was related, or you felt related to them because you knew them since you were a kid. And so, yeah, that was like another level of attachment, because you're not just their church friends or their church family, but you're also their actual family.
Mm-hmm.
I'd agree with that. I think attachment for me is an understatement. I've been through a few couple churches in my walk, and I think back to my first church. That felt like the first time in my life I really had a family. I didn't have a lot of blood relatives to kind of lean on, so the community I found in my church as a teenager brought me solace and peace, and really instilled some self-love and actualization in myself. So I was super, super, super emotionally attached to my first youth group, and to this day, they're still my family. My second church, I'd say I wasn't very attached to the congregation, but I was very, very attached to my leader, my pastor, at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
I put a lot of stock into his advice. I was with him multiple times a week. At one point, he was teaching me how to play bass. He was showing me how to get Bible study. He invested a lot of time just acting almost as a spiritual father in my life. So I felt incredibly close to him and admired his leadership style. And here at my current church, I'd say I feel both. I have a strong attachment to my pastor, again, as a spiritual father, my youth group as my best friends and family, and everybody else in the congregation. I feel blessed that this congregation treats me the way that they do, because it's the most accepted and loved I felt all around by a church. So attachment is an understatement, and if you can't tell by my outlook on it, there is a lot of emotion involved at how I look at my community at church.
That was so nice. I feel like my answer was not that nice, but I think that also like shows like there's so many different personalities in church. Like you really lead with your emotion and like what you're connected to, and I feel like that's not necessarily the case with me. I try my darndest not to lead with my emotion and lead more with my logic.
Okay, I see that a lot. It's like a wall.
Yeah, but
There's
like
no
there's
emotion.
a lot under there, but I feel like maybe because of my church hurt, or maybe because of a lot of things that happened in my life, or just the order that I am in my family. I'm the oldest sibling, or just, I don't know, my personality. I very much am logic forward versus emotionally forward. And it really irks my siblings to no end because they're more emotional.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. No, it makes sense. I mean, when you're hurt, it's like you put up a wall. And so it definitely, I mean, it's reasonable. But if we can go into it and understanding what happened, and of course you don't have to say names, you don't have to be giving any information that you don't want to. So.
Okay, Angel, do you want to go, or do you want me to take this first?
Sure, I'd love to start with the heavy stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanna preface this by saying I'm going to try to speak about my experiences as respectfully as possible, and forgive me if it feels like I'm dancing around. It's just I'm trying to only give the details that are integral to the story. But I think there's two really prevalent instances in my life where I felt church hurt. At one of my previous churches, it was the fact that I didn't feel connected to my congregation. I was there for about 3 years and never really made any genuine friends within the congregation. I had looked up to the pastor and admired the pastor, but at some point in that walk, I had gone through a breakup at that church, and I felt like the breakup wasn't handled super well. So again, emotions are running high on all cylinders in this specific scenario. I felt like we were getting bad advice from our leadership. Somebody had told the girl in question that I was never going to change because I had fallen back into some bad behavior, and that she should just leave me and never speak to me again. And it made me feel like I wasn't looked at in a fair perception, or it felt like nobody ever took the time to get to know me at that church, but had all these opinions about me. And then at the same time, that leader, my pastor at the time, had also made me feel like he maybe didn't believe in me as much as I thought. I had asked if I could temporarily leave the church because I wanted to still call that church my home, but wanted to get through the healing process. And he told me I needed to face the adversity. But Nothing was coming out of facing the adversity. I'd come to church and I'd leave without a single person shaking my hand. I asked him if I could go to Bible college. Maybe it would help evolve my ministry. And he looked at me dead in the eyes as I'm going through the worst breakup of my life and asked me, "Do you really feel like you're called to ministry?"
Wow.
So again, I spent
Yikes.
I spent all this time, years with these people, investing as much as I could, and I made mistakes. So I understand where the perception came from, but in the end, it felt like there was a lack of, I don't want to say love, but a lack of respect, and it hurt me. On the other instance of church hurt, again, I was in sort of a bad spot in my personal life. My older brother had passed away, and 8 months prior to that, I had lost my grandmother, who was the woman who raised me. So already not in the best mindset, already, again, heartbroken and not really knowing what to do with all of that. And all it took was one event to push me over the edge, which was the pastor offering to come pray for my family. And when I agreed, he didn't show. But instead of giving him grace or talking to him about it or asking why, because he didn't show up, I just took it personally and decided not to speak to him or come back to the church for well over a year. There are two very different instances of church hurt with two very different outcomes, and we can get into that more later. You can let me know if you want to get into it now, but in the first instance, I ended up having to walk away from that congregation, and 6 months later, it came out that that pastor had his own moral failure and was having his own issues behind the scenes in his personal life. And then in the second instance, that pastor took accountability and asked for forgiveness and showed me his heart. And it's what tethered me back down to reality. I think through both, I kind of learned that you can't really put your faith in people. There's a saying, God's people are not God. And I had to learn that the hard way because I was putting so much stock and so much value into the opinions of these people who were honestly, at the time, super small parts of my life. But because I held them in such high regard and I was already in an emotional state in both scenarios, I took everything personally and didn't really want to face reality and didn't want to hand it over to God. I just wanted to point the finger and say, no, that's it. You people hurt me. I'm out of here.
I think I just want to comment on that because I feel like that is exactly what church hurt is. It's whatever our emotion is or whatever someone said to us. It's always like us being like, hey, this person was mean to me, or this human made a mistake. Like, crazy that a pastor could make a mistake. Like, how dare they? Yeah. They're supposed to be superhuman. They're supposed to be just like Jesus, but you know, that's super impossible. So, but then we just put all, excuse me, my throat's dry. We put all this stock into them, and then we're like so disappointed that they let us down. But if we really just open our Bible, like basically every chapter, it'll say like, don't put your trust in humans.
Yeah, I think our pastor too recently preached about this. If I remember, the preaching was entitled "A Fresh Wound," but he spoke about Peter cutting off, I believe the name is Malchus's ear when they arrested Jesus, and Peter was a man who literally walked directly with Christ, and in a moment of frustration was the one to cut off somebody else's ear. A disciple of Christ who walked every single day directly with Jesus still managed to hurt the very people that he was supposed to be evangelizing to. So if it could happen to a disciple, it could definitely happen to us. But the point of that story is the fact that without Malchus even asking, Jesus still stood up and healed that wound. People are going to hurt us, but Christ can heal us.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it, like you guys said, it kind of shows the reality of just human beings in general, and that like we can't expect people to be perfect. I know that's kind of a cliche, but it's like, you know, we expect so much from people in the church, and when they let us down, it's like just the most surprising thing. But Amanda, do you want to share your experience?
I think that mine is, well, first of all, I am like fairly new to this church. We've been coming to this church for a little over a year. And before this, I've only went to one other church. And I think my church hurt is not just in my actual church and just like the church people that were in my home church, but maybe like the broader church organization. So I had it from both sides. I grew up in a house where we had a good foundation. We had good morals and values, and I felt like my parents did a really good job raising us, and they tried their best to stick with the Word of God in our life. And I felt like people in our congregation weren't necessarily living up to those standards, and I was always so upset as a young child, teenager, and adult. Like, why are we like held to this standard, and why is everyone else commenting about us and what we're doing, but like no one else, literally no one else is holding this standard. Not one person is holding this standard. Like, why do we need to be better? So like, I think in that moment I wanted to be like those people that hurt others. It's like, well, we're all humans. Like, why can't I just be this way if everyone else is being this way? But then on the other hand, I felt like some of my church hurt came from people in the congregation that I felt were in a position of power or position of spiritual authority, and they just never believed in me, never believed in my family, did everything to not build us up but tear us down, or just giving us advice like turn the other cheek, which I do believe in that. I do believe that you need to forgive people. I do believe that you need to turn the other cheek. But at some point, there's a line between like forgiving and then accepting abuse, like literal abuse, like verbal, mental, spiritual abuse. And that's just not okay. And I felt like I dealt with that for so long, and I mean, bless my parents. Like, they just thought that, you know, if we just do the right thing and we just forgive and forgive and forgive, like, eventually God will change their heart. But, I mean, it doesn't really happen that fast sometimes, especially when someone's an unwilling vessel. And so to take, like, from my earliest memories of childhood until, like, adulthood, taking all that and like dealing with it and just creating like such a bitterness and such a wall and such like animosity towards people because of how they treated me or my family or just people around them. It was so hurtful. And I think that one good thing that happened was we had church community that wasn't in the four walls of our church, and we were able to have friends outside of the church, have not outside of the church like as in they weren't church people, but like they brought another perspective to us, and they were like, hey, yeah, you know, you guys aren't the only ones who are being persecuted at your church. Like, this happens to everyone. And it kind of gave us a perspective, and we were able to have people that uplifted and edified us and, you know, just encouraged us. Because sometimes when you're under leadership or you're around people that put you down so much and they tell you things like, hey, what you're doing is following a bad spirit, and I just want to let you know that. And you're like, oh my gosh, I thought that I was like doing this out of like what God told me to do. I prayed about it, I fasted about it, but you're telling me I'm following a bad spirit. And then you just are like, oh my gosh, I'm so wicked, I'm so evil. And like, you question your own self, and you're just like, oh my gosh. But then you realize like, oh, later you're like, oh wait, all of these other people that are men of God, women of God, are validating what I was doing and that I thought was right, but I was told was wrong. It actually was right, but I don't know what possessed those people to say that those things are wrong and try to break my spirit in those ways. But it really, really affected me. Like, I really just thought I was the worst person ever. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I have a bad spirit in me. Like, I'm horrible. Like, and that really affects you, you know, especially when you're a young person and you're essentially a kid and a adult, elder, spiritual authority. Like, anyone tells you that, like, I feel like that really affects you.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, not similar to yours, because I don't think I've really experienced that myself at such a level as yours. But I think, like, when you have someone like a higher up or an elder or someone like that, it's like you, like, take whatever they say, like, with so much weight. And so it really affects you, especially at a young age. But how did that affect your relationship with God at all?
I think, like Angel was saying, like, he kind of needed a distance from the church to kind of heal. I think I took the opposite approach, and I was like, I doubled down, and I was like, well, I'm gonna be, it was all in a selfish way because I wanted to make myself feel better about what they said. And I was like, well, I'm gonna be better at this, and I'm gonna, like, do all these things, and I'm gonna just build all these things up in the church, and I'm gonna do things better. And, like, that's really good. But also, like, I think I kind of was doing it not in the right spirit after that, because I was, like, praying if this is right, and, you know, but I was also letting, like, my ego and pride lead me.
The one time you led with emotion.
Yeah, but you can ask my husband. The emotions that I lead with are always, like, anger. And
gosh.
like, it's never like sadness or like anything like that. It's always like it's kind of what drives me a lot of times.
Yeah, I think for me, I misconstrued how people treated me, or I misconstrued people's rejection of me for God's rejection of me, because I am so emotionally charged underneath it all. And again, I came to church, and it was the first time in my life I felt accepted. So in these instances where I didn't feel accepted or loved, and because I was spiritually immature, it felt like God had abandoned me in these moments. It wasn't until recently, when I've started taking my studying more seriously and have started talking and acknowledging these types of issues more in my life, that I realized it's not people who make me whole, or it's not people who make me full in my life, but it's in Him that we are made full. And the moment I had that realization, it's become easier in every aspect of life to be able to shrug off the hurts, or to shrug off how other people treat me, because these people don't make me whole. Christ makes me whole. And any amount of self-doubt, any amount of self-hate, or any negative feeling towards myself is unbiblical because of that concept and because of that scripture. So anytime now I feel low or I feel down, I remind myself that I'm made full through Christ, and that my walk and how I treat others and how I go about holding myself up will be a form of worship. Because if I'm constantly walking around in a negative mood or letting things affect me, nobody's ever going to see the love of Christ. And how could anybody else ever be made full if you're not working to help bring them to Christ? So it taught me a lot, but it also took a lot of hurt to get to this point now.
I definitely want to comment on that. What you said was so, I think, something that we gloss over a lot is, like, you said that you were looking for wholeness. And I feel like we don't hurt people out of our wholeness. We hurt people out of our brokenness. And if you really think about it, the church is just like a place with a bunch of broken people. So they're all coming here because they're broken. They're all here because they're broken. So why would we expect that these people wouldn't hurt us? You know, they're coming here with their own struggles, and their own hurts. But I think that's a good point. Like, we need to strive so much to let Christ make us whole so that we don't do that to other people, because I'm sure all of us have unintentionally caused church hurt. We probably don't even know it.
Now I feel like a bad person. Oh my God.
I mean, like, it could be as simple as like someone was having a bad day and you're like, oh my gosh, you look tired, and like
I hate when people tell me that.
Exactly, but like you could literally make them like have like, well, they were thinking bad about themselves, and they're like, oh well, I'm gonna continue to self-harm because they said I look ugly, or you know, like something crazy.
Yeah, that's extreme.
I think that's a good point too, of like, if somebody is comfortable enough to come to you and say that you've offended them or hurt them, take accountability for it, even if you didn't realize it, even if it wasn't intentional, because once you experience church hurt, you know how damaging it can truly be. And like I said, we work with people in the church. The church is all about building the kingdom. The church is all about community. Jesus preached a community of love. If you are the one that hurt somebody, take accountability for that and help them work through it, even if you were unaware of it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I think I need to say sorry to a few people now. No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully not.
But that is also another good point, and I don't know if this is like stepping on your agenda, but I do want to really emphasize that I think that sometimes, because we think church is such like a holy place, or everyone should be a good person, or like we don't really want to talk about problems because then it's like, oh, that church has problems, and then we talk about it. I feel like that's kind of taboo, especially in the Latin culture. Like, talking about issues is like really taboo.
Yeah.
But I feel like we need to take what Jesus said in Matthew about offending someone and then going to your brother, talking about it, because how are we ever going to solve church hurt if we literally don't talk about it?
Right. Exactly. It's the whole point of the podcast, so we can talk about it. But in the last few moments that we do have together, I wanted to ask you guys for advice. I mean, either what can churches do, what can pastors do, what can leaders, or just the congregation in general do to create a healthier environment?
That's a good question. I think I wanna walk through a little bit of like some quick healing steps for the individual, and then talk about the church. But for me, I actually came back to church for my church hurt, and I held on to the hurt for nearly 2 additional years. So as individuals, I think there's steps I've learned now through counseling with my pastor, through therapy. If you're experiencing church hurt, I think your healing has to start with acknowledgement. If you could imagine holding onto an ice cube, your hand will go numb after a while. The pain is still there. It's underneath the surface. It's just you've held on to it for so long that you can no longer feel it. And that's the situation I found myself in, where I was here, I was telling everybody I was fine, that I had let things go. But the fact of the matter is I was still holding it so tightly that emotion was bubbling up. It's just I was in so much pain, I wasn't acknowledging it. So I think healing starts with acknowledging. And from there, you need to let God do the work in you and with the other person. I talked about taking accountability if you hurt other people, but at the same time, you need to let God work on healing you once you talk about it with others. And you can't hold on to that hurt, and you just need to trust that God's ways are perfect and that he'll handle the situation and the way he needs to handle it. I mentioned earlier not to confuse God's people with God. So as you continue to come to church, just continue to seek the kingdom first. Continue to attach yourself to his word. Continue to pray. And then make sure you don't give up on all people just because of some people. At the end of the day, this walk is about bringing others to Christ. We want to see souls saved. We want to see lives changed. We want to see people healed in the same way that we needed to be healed. So we can't turn our back on people in general just because there have been a few negative experiences. And with that, I just encourage everybody to not give up your purpose over pain. Everybody has a purpose. God has a plan for everybody's life. Whether you see your work in the church as a ministry or not, it's a ministry. The church is here to build the kingdom, and we're here to contribute to the kingdom. So I think church hurt as individuals, there's definitely steps you can take to help get over it, but be intentional as you try to get over it. When it comes to building a healthier environment in the church, I've mentioned it a couple times in this conversation, but just transparency and honesty. The difference was night and day between my previous instance of church hurt and my current one. Previously, that pastor just kept telling me no, didn't want to really hear me out, didn't hear my heart, and I felt like he wasn't giving me counsel. And when I left the church, it was confirmed when the issues he was dealing with came out publicly. On the flip side, with the pastor after that, when I experienced church hurt and felt like he failed me, and I finally brought it to him after holding it on for so long, he asked me for forgiveness and he took accountability and he showed me his heart. When I told him he failed me, he reminded me that he's just a man. When I mentioned that he said some things that offended me, he made me realize and let me know, you're one of the few people I can let my hair down around. I'm a person who holds rank, who holds position. You're one of the people I look at as my spiritual sons. I want to be able to have casual conversation with you, but if that's not the type of relationship you're seeking from me, we don't have to go there, but which is why I'm glad you brought it to me. I think him showing me his heart is exactly how we could be building a healthier environment. Mm-hmm. Instead of being in denial, instead of trying to get even, instead of trying to outshine everybody, we need to just be working in unison, being honest, and displaying strong character, because that's really what's going to bring others to Christ as well. I think it's in 1 Corinthians, one part of the body cannot look at the other and say, I don't need you. Everybody is needed in the church, regardless of what purpose you serve. And when one part of the body is hurting, that's all hurting. When one part of the body is being uplifted, the rest of the body should rejoice. So just love people. That's what it comes down to. Love God, love people. Everything else will come and fall into place in between those two things. But really just let them see your heart, let them see you bleed, and let them know that they're loved and accepted. And if anything goes wrong, like I said, take accountability for it and work with that person and help them get over that hurt, because we're not going to get anywhere if we just point the finger back and say you're wrong.
I agree wholeheartedly. Listen to everything that Angel just said, because all of that was rooted in what God tells us to do. But I also just want to share something quickly of something that I've been convicted of as I'm still currently healing from decades of church hurt and trauma, because I finally put up a boundary that I needed to. I want to say that, like, it's okay, because we're human, to be like, oh, you know what? That person really hurt me and they are like so mean, and you can think all these, you're human, so you're going to think all these negative thoughts. Brother so-and-so, sister so-and-so is the worst person ever. Like, they're so bad that, like, to me, they're evil, But I think the part of the healing that we need to do when it comes to church hurt is really, like, doing what God said to do when we have adversaries. Is like, what does he say to do to our enemies? He literally tells us to pray for them, and that's the last thing that we want to do. Because I don't know about you, but if I don't like someone, I do not want the best for them. I don't want success for them. I don't want them to look cute. I don't want anything. Like, I don't want the best for them. Like, that's just
It's
me.
rude.
I'm sorry. It's rude, but I feel like when you're so hurt, you really don't.
No, you're totally right.
But
Yeah.
I will say, like, it does definitely, I have to pray for my own self when I have those thoughts, like, hey, God, like, help me to forgive them. But then once you start having those negative thoughts about people, try to pray for them. Even if it's something simple, but, like, try to bless them. Try to be like, you know what, God, like, I know that this person was so mean to me, but, like, I pray that you just, like, heal whatever's going on with them that's, like, disturbing their spirit so much that they're so unhappy. Like
Mm-hmm.
something, you know, like just really try to bless them, because I feel like it makes a big difference. And the last thing I want to say is that it's okay to pray for forgiveness for your own heart and that you do forgive them. But for a lot of people in the church, you can forgive them, or you can go to your spiritual authority like Angel did and get that say that you forgive them or get reconciliation. But there is oftentimes people or instances that are just so toxic and so unhealthy that you need to pray that you can forgive them and that God does a work in their life. But it's okay if you set a boundary and you don't allow that person or that place in your life anymore, because it's harmful to you spiritually, physically, mentally. Like, so I think that's important to say too, because sometimes you really want to just be like happy-go-lucky and I forgive everyone because that's what God told us to do, but not actually using wisdom and discernment to know when something is a safe place and when something's not a safe place.
Definitely.
That's good.
Wow, you guys are good. I don't know why you guys were so scared today. Oh my gosh.
Wow,
I
snitch.
think we just get nervous because, like, although like Angel and I have been so hurt by people in different ways, I think we don't necessarily want to be like, hey, so this person, we don't want to like say it on the mic in front of everyone, like, oh my gosh, like these people are horrible.
No, of course. No.
We definitely go through these experiences to be able to share them once we come out on the other end. So like I said, I take accountability. I was not perfect in the past, but I learned from how I treated other people and how other people treated me, and it just made me a better person overall. And
we're still learning. So if we hurt
Amen.
anyone, we are very sorry, and you can come to me. I don't know if you could come to Angel, but definitely come to me, because sometimes I don't know if I've hurt someone.
Just be honest, be truthful.
Yeah,
Tell them when you're hurt so you can apologize.
exactly.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you both for being on here today. And listeners, just keep an eye out for more YouTube videos that will be popping up for the For You podcast. We'll see you next month.